If you're feeding your cat a raw diet or any sort of raw food, could it be giving them TB, tuberculosis? Well, it sounds crazy, but it's potentially true. Hi, I'm Dr. Alex from Our Pets Health, helping you and your cat to live a healthier, happier life. So make sure you're subscribed if that's something you're interested in. So today I just wanted to bring you the news that in England there have been reports of 5 outbreaks of cats developing TB who have been fed a raw diet. Now, why is this concerning? Well, not only is TB an incredibly serious disease, it was also an intestinal form of TB that they suffered from, and that's actually really an uncommon form of TB. Cats, they normally get skin lesions, they don't get intestinal problems. Not only that though, these were indoor cats. So indoor cats, they don't have exposure to TB, and again in cats, normally they develop TB as a result of bites that then get infected with tuberculosis. Now, these were indoor cats. There is a suggestion that they are more pedigree cats, so they didn't have any access to the outside world. The commonality though is that they were all fed on a commercial frozen raw food diet. So we don't know for certain that the diet is involved, and that's something that's being investigated, but it's definitely cause for concern. As well, it's an outbreak of 5 different households, and they are in separate locations, and they're in different TB hotspots as well. So there were 3 that are in really low TB areas. So tuberculosis in cattle is a problem in different parts of England, but it's a higher problem in certain locations compared to others. 3 of the outbreaks were in low risk locations, 1 was on an edge zone and 1 was in a high risk. There is also another 6th case that is just being in the early stages of being investigated at the moment. So, this is definitely something to think about. So which cats seem to be at risk? Well, like I say, these seem to be indoor cats that are fed on a frozen raw food diet. So if you're feeding your cat on a frozen raw food diet, but potentially any raw food diet, it highlights that there is a risk of infection with feeding these diets. If they're not cooked, if they're not sterilized, then there is the risk of developing infection. That risk might be incredibly low, but incredibly low doesn't mean nothing, and it's definitely something to consider. There is a suggestion, because a warning's been put out, that these were younger cats and they're more pedigree cats. So, is there more of a susceptibility to young cats or to certain breeds of cats? It might be though that these cats are just more likely to be receiving the diet that has been, was being fed, whereas your standard moggy is more likely to be an outdoor cat and more likely to be fed on a commercial biscuit or wet food, for example. That's not clear at this stage. Like I say, we're in the early ages of investigation. And then the other concern is that this is an unusual form of the disease. So an intestinal form, like I say, is not common, and that can be difficult to diagnose because it's not something that we're really looking for, and it mimics other serious diseases like FIP or feline infectious peritonitis or lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. All of those can form kind of intestinal lesions that will be similar to TB. So, this is not meant to say that all raw diets are bad and will definitely give your cat, or your dog tuberculosis or any other form of illness, but it's one thing to consider. It might be that a certain batch of food is bad. It might be a certain brand that hasn't got the quality controls in place that it really needs to have. But it does highlight, that there are some risks with feeding a raw food diet. Now, those risks might be negligible in your eyes, and that's fine if you've taken those all on board. Also, there are risks in, potentially other diets that we feed. If you think I'm just getting on, kind of having a go at raw food, well, you need to check out my video where I kind of discuss the potential risk between a grain-free diet and a commercial diet, and heart disease in dogs who don't normally suffer from that specific type of heart disease, which is a dilated cardiomyopathy. So I think kind of one of the take-home messages with that one is that there are a lot of faddy diets out there that don't necessarily have a lot of testing behind them, don't have a lot of real-world kind of experience behind them, and there may be risks involved with that without there being any definite benefits. As for raw food, well, I've got a video planned very soon where I discuss kind of the pros and cons of raw food feeding compared to commercial diets, and potentially the pros and cons of feeding those. You know, it's a heated subject. It's something that stirs up a lot of passion in a lot of people, but I just want to have that discussion with you and give you my thoughts on that, as well as hear your feedback, because, you know, it's really important. I think that all these conversations are civil, that they're two-way, so they are conversations. They very often, though, they end up as shouting matches. If you go online, if you go onto forums, if you go onto Twitter, you'll very often see you've got one group of people shouting at each other their viewpoints, you've got the other group of people shouting the reverse. There's no discussion, there's no agreement, and it's just a wasted exercise. But anyway, that's it from me. Keep an eye out for that video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Are you feeding these diets? You know, what was your thought behind giving them? I'd love to hear from you. But until next time, I'm Dr. Alex from Our Pets Health, because they're family.